Dr. Geeta Chopra is an academician at the University of Delhi. She is a researcher, a social advocate for children, and a writer in the field of child development for more than 3 decades now. Her major work includes in early detection of disabilities and inclusion as well as child rights in India. She has written 7 books, chapters in various books, and 20 plus research papers, and presented her work and has been invited in more than 70 conferences. She liaisons closely with NGOs and has been on the board of studies mentoring courses of other universities. She is a part of many expert groups on disability and early childhood development constituted by Government of India. We're all happy to have you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Shreya, for your kind words. Am I audible, everyone?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. You're audible, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me, Dr. Sujata, for this wonderful professional deliberations on the scope of child development and human development. And I'm sure students are benefiting greatly, and it puts on front the natural pride that most of the speakers have in the subject. And after listening to Dr. Jigisha Shastri short while ago and yesterday to Dr. Shagufa, it was wonderful the way they have been great advocates for the subject. So really, after listening to Dr. Shastri, I thought that she's already said what was to be said. Can you see my screen? Is my screen visible?
No, ma'am, it's not being shared.
Okay. So, so I go into the window and share it, is it?
Yes, ma'am, you have a share screen, a share content option at the top of your screen.
Yeah, that I've clicked, yes.
Yes, and then you say a share screen, ma'am. You have an one. So you have an option that says screen number 1.
Is it visible now?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
All right, great. So what I was saying was that after listening to Dr. Jigisha Shastri, I thought there was so little that I could add because she had put together things so beautifully. But I would like to begin a little picking up the threads from where Dr. Shastri left. One student posed the question, how do we develop a positive attitude towards human development? I think that's the purpose of this entire conference that has been so beautifully put together by St. Carmel College of Bangalore and by Dr. Sujata and her team. So the purpose, I think, is to bring and evoke in the students a sense of pride, a sense of purposefulness, and a sense that you are so poised as professionals tomorrow in the field to impact lives of thousands and thousands and millions of children that we have in our country. I'll deviate a bit from the topic that I have today, just to assuage the thoughts and to instill you all with a sense of pride. When I was your age, when I finished my 12th standard, I did pretty well for that time, and I had made it to the most famous St. Stephen's College of New Delhi for physics honors and mathematics honors. And I'd also made it to Lady Irwin College in BSc Home Science. So I went to a neighboring lady who was teaching in Delhi University. She was herself a professor. So I went and asked her, ma'am, what should I do? I have made it to Lady Irwin and I've made it to St. Stephen's. So she said, what will you do after doing physics honors and maths honors? Go to Lady Irwin. And I'm so glad I did that, because today I know that my work has impacted millions of children, and not just my work, the fact that we as teachers are poised in a position to nurture students like you who tomorrow will become professionals and make a difference to lives of so many children in our country who are so much in need of professional input from all of you. So I feel that I made a wonderful decision, and the place that I am today, I have full gratitude, I feel, towards God to be able to have been able to do this. So today I have been asked to speak on the applied areas of human development, and I hope I answered the query or the concern raised by one of the students when she said, how do we develop positive attitude towards HD? We develop a positive attitude by being proud of what we are doing and being purpose driven, and which I'm going to reiterate in my entire presentation today. So applied areas of human development and avenues for professional development. And I thought that I would be focusing on disability and child rights. And just before me, ECT has been beautifully covered by Dr. Jigisa Shastri. So just little bit touching upon HD. I don't know if I didn't attend the entire conference, but at the risk of being a little repetitive, I think I would like to quickly run through these first 2-3 slides only, not too many. Basically reiterating what is HD. HD basically, as we all know, it's going to be tracing development of a human being from prenatal beginnings right up to old age, and it focuses on stability as well as change. And it talks of norms in development, but at the same time it accepts non-normative development, and it also understands that development is not happening in a vacuum, and it also understands the various people in the person's environment, whether it is family or laws or neighborhood, they are going to be impinging on the development of the child, and they will make an impact. So it is not just the child that we are studying, but we also are studying the various forces around him. So how those forces keep changing in a dynamic manner. For example, COVID as an example, we were having such a comfortable, straightforward life, and suddenly we had COVID and everything just changed for all of us. So how to handle those changes? So it's stability, along with that acceptance of changes. And also we are studying the micro as well as macro contexts which are influencing us. And we also understand that though all of us have got universal parameters in development, children across the world, whether you're a Chinese child or a child growing up in Mozambique, or whether you're growing up in Japan or in some beautiful coastal areas of Kerala, they have the same universal development, yet each one of us is unique, and we track that uniqueness. We enjoy that diversity, and we enjoy that differences that God has created, which makes life itself so beautiful, and human development as a subject so unique and so varied and enriched. And we also understand that human development does not take place in one facet only. It happens in all dimensions, and it is multifaceted. It is lifelong. It doesn't stop at adolescence. We keep learning, we keep growing, we keep understanding things around us. And human development, if we can say, it is basically a co-construction of biology, culture, and individual, hence highlighting the role of hereditary and environment. The title of the entire conference is HD as an interdisciplinary field, and therefore it is so extremely rich. Today is the time of interdisciplinary and various disciplines talking to each other. This is something which is very new, which has come up. But as far as HD is concerned, we took birth through an interdisciplinary method. So it is something which runs in our blood. So our discipline basically derives its content from whole lot of disciplines, whether it is anatomy and physiology. And physiology, for example, we are talking of how hormones influence the adolescent and his sexual desires and his desire to look beautiful, and also impact his body. Or anatomy, when we talk of physical development, and at birth a child is a particular weight, and at 5 months he's going to be doubling that weight, and he's going to be 3 times the weight when he's 1 year old, and so on and so forth. Or at particular age, how many inches of height we are going to gain, etc. Or genetics, which tell us about the various mutations which happen in our body, or for example Down syndrome being impacted by the 21st chromosome. So we have drawn from genetics. Psychology has had a huge influence, and I really don't think we need to talk about it, whether it is behaviorism, whether it is Freud, whether it is Erikson, whether it is Piaget. We've had a huge influence, and even the entire psychometric movement of testing has come from, has been derived from psychology. Sociology and anthropology, when we talk of culture and cultural influences, for example, co-sleeping. In India, it's normal for a baby to sleep with the parents. In fact, your baby, if it doesn't sleep with your parents, your mother-in-law will come and tell you what's wrong with you. Have you given up on your child? You want something to happen to my grandchild? And the same co-sleeping, if it happens in a Western country, would be really looked at with a frown on the face, because they want from the very beginning. So each culture is unique, and sociology and anthropology views cultures with those lens, and therefore we have drawn heavily from sociology and anthropology, where we try to play down the role of cultural imperialism, that no single culture is superior to another culture, and each culture is unique and each has got its own methods of bringing up children, which help the child fit into the social requirements and the culture in which the child is born. Psychiatry, the entire movement of mental health and the treatment methods have been drawn from psychiatry and even clinical psychology for that matter. So the entire concept of mental health and treatment has come from psychiatry, and we very well use it when we are talking of child guidance within our realm of professional courses that we undertake after our graduation. Education, greatly we have given and taken from education, whether it is what to teach a 3-year-old, what to teach a 6-year-old, what to teach a 8-year-old. It draws from Piaget's theory, and we built upon the educational requirements of the child depending on the what the child is developmentally ready to do. Gynecology, the entire thing of prenatal development or low birth weight children, how to handle them, and NICU, the concept NICU, it comes from gynecology or even from pediatrics, which I haven't mentioned here. Ethology is the study of animals in their natural habitat. So understanding of critical periods, understanding of attachment, understanding of maternal deprivation, whole lot of things have been derived from ethology. So HD, we are very proud that it is an interdisciplinary field, something to which the world is waking up now. We woke up to it even at the time of our birth. So it is something which we draw from, hence it becomes extremely enriched discipline. And why we need to be interdisciplinary is because no two human beings are same, and since we have millions of variations amongst each one of us, therefore we need to have millions of lenses through which we can view that individuality, that uniqueness, to enjoy that and to understand that. When we look at the HD programs, what are we really teaching? If we really look at it, the HD programs across the country are teaching ECD, whether we call it ECCE, ECD, we talk of early childhood, we are talking of adolescence, we are covering elderly. When we in Delhi, earlier we used to call it child development, and about 10 or 12 years ago, we shifted to the human development thing, and we took entire lifespan into our ambit. Prior to that, we were only doing up to adolescence. Then elderly, then even teach child rights. We teach counseling and well-being. We teach children with disabilities. We also talk of extension and community work, and we expose children to a lot of these activities. Hence, as Dr. Shastri very rightly said, that if you have to get into the field, you have to dirty your hands. You can't just be sitting in the classrooms and talking about children. You really have to get into the field and work with children, to be with children, to understand those nuances which separate them one from the other, and how to handle those individual variations. And behavior change communication and media is extremely important part, which we do study. For example, I'll give an example. We had some speaker from the Aga Khan Foundation yesterday. She said that they had been working in communities with Muslim women, and they once took the Muslim women to watch a movie which they had never ever done before. So that some of these women had never ever stepped into a cinema hall. So after they had watched the movie, they were sitting outside in the park and enjoying McDonald's. They had never even eaten a McDonald's burger. So somebody asked her, this lady, okay, madam, did you take permission from your husband before coming for this movie? So they asked this Aga Khan Foundation lady. So she said, "Nee, man, I'm grown up enough. I don't take permission. I just inform my family that I'll be going here and here." So they were quiet for a while, and they said, "Even we are adults from now on. We are also not going to take permission. We are going to inform." So how we are going to change behaviors, how we are going to bring about those subtle changes in the way people think, and how we are going to steer them gently towards what would be the more empowered path for them, what would be more a path which is more towards leading them towards their own rights, their entitlement, and the entitlement to which they have kind of become powerless to really exercise. So BCC actually does that, and media can play a very important role. So we do talk about this in our various programs. So now, what are some of the concerns? And as I said, that if we have to develop a positive attitude. I'll keep harping on the positive attitude because I thought this is something which we lack. We are not proud of what we are doing. We need to be very proud, and we need to feel very privileged that we are in a position to make a difference to our country. What are some of the current concerns? And I'm going to be talking about these concerns a little bit in detail before I move on to avenues which try to cover up or which try to address these concerns. So disability, disadvantage and exclusion is one of the concerns. Social policies. What are the social policies? What are the laws that we have? We have good laws, but what's happening to their implementation? Health and disability and child health, specifically maternal health, also is a concern. Emotional well-being is a concern. Parenting, which, as Dr. Shagufa yesterday very beautifully pointed out, that is an ever-changing demands are there, where children are being viewed as a project. And parenting is no longer a beautiful give and take where you enjoyed those moments of sheer joy with your children. It's become far more purposeful than it was in the earlier years, and how to prepare parents to do that is also a concern. And then gender and aging is another concern. When you look at why I'm calling these points as concern, I want to support it with some of the demographic data related to child survival, protection and disability. So we have 40% child population in our country, and census 2011 says, which is about 440 million, and census 2011 says that 40% of these children are in the vulnerable category. If you convert this into numbers, can you imagine what these numbers? Almost 200 million children are in a vulnerable situation. So that is the agenda for you all. 200 million children who are in vulnerable position. Under 5 mortality rate, India ranks 53 out of 192 nations. 192nd position, Iceland is sitting on that. It has a under 5 mortality rate of 2 per 1,000 children who are born, under 5 who die. And in India, out of 1,000 children who are going to be reaching the 5th year of age, 37 of them are dying. So India has a U5 mortality rank of 93 nation, and we call ourselves an economic superpower, but we definitely are not a social superpower. Definitely not. Out of these under 5 maternity deaths, under 5 mortality deaths, neonatal mortality, 62% of them are neonates, which is less than 40 days of age. So 62%, which means about 9 lakh children per annum die who are under 5, of which 5.5 lakh are neonates. So which means it really speaks volumes about the maternal facilities and childbirth facilities that we are giving to our women. It speaks volumes of our health system. It speaks volumes about our attitudes. It speaks volumes of our practices of maternal care and child care, and all of these are places where you students can make a difference. Then early marriage, 47%. We've been independent for 60 years now. Sati Pratha was abolished by Annie Besant and her company Raja Ram Mohan Roy in the beginning of the 20th century, and 100 years later we have 47% child marriages. So what are we doing about it? What is happening to our social structure? These are areas where you girls need to work. I urge you, so take pride. You are in a position to do it. And with COVID coming in, all the parameters that I have spoken about are really going to nosedive, and we are going to be having so much more poverty. IMF is saying that we are going to have increase in extreme poverty from 84 million to 130 million people. And it is believed that every 1% rise in poverty is going to lead to 0.7% increase in child labor. So when we look at the protection statistics, look at child labor. Child labor, as per the 2011 census, it was claimed that it has gone down by 65% compared to 2001 census. But now we have strong reasons to believe that whatever gains had been made in the past 10 years related to all our parameters of IMR, U5MR, or maternal mortality, or child labor, or child trafficking, or poverty, they're all going to nosedive. So who is going to be doing something about it? Yeah, our young generation, whom we are preparing with so much loving care, all of you. So when you look at the child sex ratio, it's just been going down and down, and it is far worse in the northern states, which are rich, compared to the southern states, speaking volumes of our social structures and the country in which we are living. Then disability. The claim in 2011 was that we have roughly 2.45% children of people who are having a disability in our country. But when you look at WHO, it says that 15% of people globally have a disability. So India is great. We have only 2.45. Do you think you can believe these statistics? So we have huge problem with the data that we have available. For various reasons, children with disabilities are invisible. Parents hide them. We have different definitions of disability, different methods of data collection. Similarly, when we have sensitive topics like the rate of child sexual abuse or child abuse for that matter, or even child trafficking, how much that is happening, we have no data or very poor data on this because of the sensitivity of the issue and because of the fact that it's very hard to collect data on all these things. We do have beautiful laws, the POCSO, the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act. Then we have the JJ Act, beautiful act again, which takes care not only of the child who's come in conflict with law, but also the child who is in need of care and protection. Then we have the Child Labour Prohibition Regulation Act, which is now being called the Child and Adolescent Labour Act. Adolescent component has also been added to that. Then we have the Right to Persons with Disability Act, takes a right-based approach towards persons with disability. We have beautiful laws and many more. I've just listed the most important ones. And these are things that we are doing, and these are the things, though we have problems which I have highlighted in the first bullet, but the second bullet, these are legislative supports that we have for the various things. And of course, India is also a signatory, I'll add it here, to the UNCRC. And we also have our own policy for children, national policy for children, and various other policies like ECC policy, etc., which were spoken about by the previous speakers. Now, what do you do? I mean, avenues we can only think in terms of not only for graduate students, but we have to think that after students have finished with their graduation, these questions kept coming up for various speakers. Ma'am, do we need to do something after we graduate? Do we need to study further, etc.? So I strongly advocate that yes, we must study further. And the various things that you can do, I'll quickly go through these two slides because we can't talk of avenues for professional development till we have also spoken of higher education. What after your graduation, that is. So you can do Masters in Human Development. It's referred to in different terminologies like HDCH, HDFS, HDFE, CD, etc. Then Masters in ECC and ECD being offered across the country by various organizations. Then we have B.Ed in Special Education. This is right after your graduation. Rather than doing just a simple B.Ed, you can do B.Ed in Special Education. So you would be getting specialized input to become a special educator and work in the field of disability. Masters in Social Work, Masters in Community Development Program offered by Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Then Masters and Diploma in Child Rights, a degree in law after graduation. Which can be a beautiful combination if you want to become a child advocate, and there has been so much of talk about child advocacy in the previous sessions. Then Masters and Diploma in Counseling and Masters in Children's Media, some of which I have highlighted, not exhausted, exhaustive list. I'm sure the previous speakers have also given a lot of emphasis on all this. So you can just see what has already been covered and what is being added on to the what has already been done previously. So higher education, you can study at various government and its affiliated colleges. Then IP University offers a special education program, the B.Eds that I spoke about. This is for community development as well as disability studies. I'm just giving you the broad ones. I'm sure the southern states have got so many other options available. I'm just giving you a perspective that I'm kind of more aware of. Then Jamia, Delhi University, Chandigarh, a whole lot of them, Agra, Banasthali, in southern part we have in Mysore, we've got in Coimbatore, a whole, and then Mount Carmel, your own college. So all these places do offer the master's programs. Then RCI also offers, which is Rehabilitation Council of India, RCI offers affiliated courses on disability, like say on early intervention. So you can take up become an early interventionist. Then various national institutes the country has, which offer courses on disabilities. For example, Ali Akbar Jung National Institute for the Hearing Handicapped is in Bombay. This offers for hearing impairment. National Institute for the Orthopedic Handicap offers for courses for children who have orthopedic handicap. Then NIRTAR is basically research in the field of disability. NIMHANS is for mental health and well-being. Institute for the Physically Handicapped, IPH, is for physically handicapped. And composite resource centers, they are resource centers for persons with disability. And Pune University has masters in child media, and any law college after completion of your graduation you can do for studying law. Now I come to the other aspect of the talk, which says applied human development. Now you have finished your completed your work. You've studied already. Applied HD, because we are studying about human beings and we are studying about the various nuances of human beings and various problems that they encounter and various difficulties and challenges that they face. And we are people who have been taught that how we can intervene in the lives, and we can devise programs and design programs so that we can facilitate development. Applied HD is the application of those concepts and methods and workable solutions which we can use to promote optimal development of infants, young children, youth and their families in a variety of settings. And applied HD is the use of knowledge that you have acquired in your graduate studies through your field experiences, through your classroom teachings, through your internships, through your observations, through your working with children in your own nursery schools of your own departments, etc., which you might be having, through the people like us who have been coming and speaking to you. And these knowledge and skills that you have acquired in this course, how you can use in the intersecting dimensions of human development, that is applied human development. So professionals in the field of applied human development would employ their knowledge, which is evidence-based research. It's not just out of the blue. We have been conducting researches on various aspects of human development, and we have seen which solutions work and which solutions are best suited, and which solution which you are offering may or may not be effective. So the fact that you are using evidence-based research, for example, I'll give an example of evidence-based research. We talk of importance of early years. Now, study in neurosciences in the Harvard University indicates that the prolific development of the brain in the early years is something like 1 million synaptic connections being generated by the brain every second, every few seconds. So that is the rate of brain development. Therefore, if we say early brain development is extremely critical and early childhood are very important years, there is evidence to say that, and we support it with evidence. So professionals in HD, we employ our knowledge and through evidence-based research and training to promote healthy development at every stage of human life. And professionals in this field can translate research and theory in human development into practical applications. That's important. We translate the research and whatever theory we have studied into practical applications and support individuals and their families from broad contexts, as well as at multiple at-risk situations. So what are the multiple at-risk situations? You could be in extreme poverty, there could be trafficking happening, there could be bonded child labor, there could be child labor which is not permitted, child marriages at a very early age, child abuse, even sexual violence against women or violence against women. So these are practical situations, and we become equipped to be handling these situations. Now, looking at the avenues for professional development, there are so many, and I'm sure I'm going to be reiterating some which have already been mentioned by my previous August set of speakers who were there. I have just put together some of whatever I could think of, and I'm going to be highlighting the ones on disability and child rights. So lifespan human development, that's what we study. So in this we specifically study ECC and ECD. Dr. Jigisha Shastri has already spoken about the various avenues that we have available for them. Then we also can work with adolescents. So adolescents, basically, whether we run the child guidance, the adolescent guidance clinics for them, or skill development programs for adolescents could be a thing to do. Also for the elderly, what options do we have for positive development of positive old age solutions? Can we think of some, and can we design some positive old age solutions? So individualized plans to reflect differences in culture, human diversity, background, temperament, personality, abilities and disabilities, and that is what we human development professionals can do. We can individualize plans for which are going to be reflecting the differences in personality and also requirements of the individual. Then child and adolescent development is another arena of practice, which includes domains of cognitive, social, emotional, mental health, and even things like career counseling, what to take up as a career. This is where you all can come in and not only help them in their mental health solutions and even resolving some of the conflicts that they face in their day-to-day lives, being a stage of storm and conflict, but also guide them towards and steer them towards a career which would be innately suited to their abilities and their aptitudes. Then counseling and guidance, as I've already said, and also intervening in psychopathology, developmental psychopathology, and developmental disorders. Coming to child rights, we have major instances of child abuse, neglect, and we have children in conflict with law. So we could be designing programmatic interventions for working and street children, for children who are being trafficked, for children who are of migrant workers, for child prostitutes, for children of refugees, and for children in very difficult circumstances, for example, agricultural laborers, or working in the mines, or working in the glass factories, or working in matchbox factories. So designing interventions for them is something which students of human development can do. Looking at the children with disabilities. So as Dr. Jigisa Shastri mentioned, that's my major area. Early intervention, how to recognize disabilities and how to intervene at an early stage could be a major area. How to include all the children with disabilities in all the ECCE programs. So how to make all the Anganwadis and preschool centers inclusive. So before that, we have to identify children within the communities who have a disability and encourage the parents to send the children to these centers, but it will not finish there. How do we increase the capacity of the early childhood worker to be able to handle a child with disability in her classroom? And for that matter, if inclusion has to even happen in the higher grades, how do we intervene, or how do we develop programs so that we can train teachers, develop their skills so that they can actually do a true inclusion rather than just a paper inclusion, which is mandated as per the RPWD Act. So implementation of the Act and how do we actually make it really happen? We as human development professionals can actually make it happen. Then working with children, for example, the disability is not a heterogeneous, it's not a homogeneous group. Children with disability is a heterogeneous group. So you could be having a child who has autistic spectrum disorders, or learning disability, or hearing disability, or intellectual disability. And within those also there could be so many nuances and to so many variations in the way the disability is expressing itself. There could be, for example, a child who's got cerebral palsy could not just be having a physical difficulty, but there could also be visual loss, for example. This child could be having multiple disabilities. So each child, how to plan for each and every child, and how to intervene and help them to help in their learning processes, and teach them activities of daily living, and how to train them. Each of them by itself is an independent field in which you can work, whether it is autism where you can work, whether it is LD where you can work, whether it is orthopedic disability or intellectual. These are all independent areas of work, and not just as a special educator per se as one thing. There are different things which you can do. So how you design services for them, how do you implement programs, how you plan environments for them, how do you make the spaces barrier free for them, how do you make things accessible, how do you educate communities about them, how do you educate parents about them, how do you create awareness, how do you develop, how do you help communities dispel negative stereotypic attitudes towards persons with disabilities. These are the areas which are waiting for you to take on. And I would like to tell you that when it comes to disability, only 15% of children with disabilities are serviced. 85% for them, nothing is happening. So it's an area which is lying absolutely vacant for you to make your own path. As Dr. Shastri said in the morning, you can carve your niche here. She gave you example of Preeti and Rekha. So these are areas where you can actually carve your niche. So these are the spaces where we can develop developmentally appropriate materials. We can design special aids for them. We can get into the production of these aids, and we can get into developing our resource centers, which you run for yourself. So there's huge area, not huge scope, not only in terms of working somewhere, but also being on your own and being entrepreneurial in this. Then we can assist communities and families to access relevant information about legislations, regulations, policy standards, as well as additional support. We have a beautiful organization in Delhi called Earth Asta. It adopts a community-based approach for rehabilitation and mainstreaming of persons with disability. It approaches families which have individuals, adults and children with disabilities, and makes reach to them various government policies and programs which are for the persons with disability. Especially in poverty situations, families don't even know that if I have a child or a person with disability, what services government is offering for them, what can we do for them. So there is a set of resources which government has allocated, which is not reaching the beneficiary. So you can become that conduit, that catalyst. You can reach out in the communities and design holistic programs using a community-based approach. And you can partner with families in goal setting and designing developmental support for children and families and interventions for them. Research, which can feed into policy. The more I say about research, the less it is, because this is one area where tomorrow, I hope at least 50% of you will get into the field of research. And when it comes to disability, you can work towards early detection. For example, I've just enrolled a student under me. My own work was on early detection of disabilities. And this was good 25 years ago, which I had developed a module for early detection of disabilities. And the 4 disabilities which I had taken up were orthopedic, visual, hearing and intellectual. Now I have just enrolled a student who is going to develop early detection and intervention, my kind of work only, but in learning disabilities. So when you look at autism and learning disabilities, this is something to which our country is waking up only recently. And I'm so happy that I have another student who's going to be working under me and who's going to be working on early detection in classrooms of learning disability and simple interventions that we could take. So disability surveys is so important. The example which I just gave you, that our country figure says that we have 2.45% with disability. WHO says 50% disability, 15% persons have a disability. So there is a huge gap in the reality.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, 5 more minutes.
Oh, really? I just have gone on and on. I'm really sorry. Okay, I'll quickly finish.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll try to finish. I just got 3-4 more slides to go. So inclusion is one area, and involving families. So parent education is another area in disability. We can involve communities, we can educate parents, develop manuals for them, also give them skills in handling their child in their own homes, studying the lived experiences. So we can set up, as I said, resource center. And also there is a lot of scope in data desegregation. For example, if you've got, for example, a government office, in that government office, how many persons with disability are employed? Can we have data on that? Or government schools in your town, how many these government schools, how many have children with disability studying in those government schools? So data desegregation in terms of disability is one area where we, and in healthcare, for example, if you've got a dispensary in your locality, in that dispensary, how many children with disability or adults with disability use the facilities of the dispensary? In child rights, again, we have child protection, very important laws. How do we create awareness about those laws? How do we become part of the system which is implementing those laws? For example, if we have the JJ Act, we have the child welfare committees. How can we become part of those child welfare committees? How can we open recreation centers in the slums and become contact point for children who are just delinquents and who are destitutes in the slums, to come to those contact points and spend their time in a productive manner? So can we become implementers? Can we become those individuals who are going to be reaching out to children? And can you do something about children who are prostitutes or child labor? So these are places where you all can work. ECC already has been given. ICDS is another area where we can bring in the inclusive Anganwadis. Not just that, also child protection is one of the important parts. Then in child and maternal health, again, behavior change Communication is very, very important. I gave you the example of women informing their husband rather than taking permission from their husband. I'll give you one more example of another PhD research which has just she has just finished her work, where it was found that the mothers-in-law felt that iron and folic acid during pregnancy the woman need not have because it is just a fad of doctors, whereas iron and folic acid consumption during pregnancy leads to positive outcomes and better birth weight of the babies. But the mother-in-law becomes a deterrent in the health-seeking behavior of the daughter-in-law. So these are the kinds of researches which feed into our policies and which recommend what are the changes which we need to bring about. So the clear recommendation is that for all these things, we really have to educate our mothers-in-law as well. It is not just a question of the couple. So another important thing in research is that we need to adopt qualitative approaches more than quantitative approaches. Coming to careers now, this is the last bit. So we can work in various ministries of state governments like the WCD, ICDS, Education Ministry, Social Justice Empowerment, National Human Rights Commission, etc. Now, international organization, we would reach much later into ActionAid or Oxfam or CARE or Aga Khan or even UNICEF. And HUC is another Indian kind of an organization where we would be able to reach. And then in research organizations, many ministries look for research assistants. We can look at their websites. We can look at the CSR box. We can look at DevNet. We can go through LinkedIn by being in the LinkedIn network of seniors. You know, you can always request to become part of the LinkedIn network of all the people who have come today, including me. Then any school you can work as special educator. RPWD Act today says that each school is supposed to have a special educator, so you can hone your skill to pick up a degree after your graduation in special education and work as a special educator. And once you have worked that for a couple of years, then you can begin your own center, which many of my students have done. They are running their own centers in special education. I have one running for autism, one running even for speech. Then psychological test is something which you can develop. I have developed myself. You can develop modules, you can develop guidebooks. Then technological solution, for example, in COVID, we needed technological solution. Early childhood education is happening completely in the online mode. And Mobile Crashes has even adopted parents as the main people who are there, training parents to implement it at home. So they're sending them audios and videos for parent education. Mobile Crash is not going straight to the young child. It is using this alternate way. So technological solutions to the problems which we encounter in everyday life. So content development for educational children with disabilities and for parents also. Then you can become part of any NGO program as program coordinators, program managers. Some big NGOs which have international presence and national presence are organizations like Mobile Crashes, Pratham. Spaston is in your Tamil Nadu itself. Again, a beautiful organization. It would have centers, I'm sure, across other states as well. Then you can be, as I mentioned, you can join the child welfare committees as at the JJ centers. You can be counselors. You can be part of adoption agencies and recreation centers, which I just mentioned. And also you can be counselors in all of these at the CWC, at JJ centers, because children who have been abused, they are under great duress and distress, and they require a lot of counseling. So you can work as counselor even in these various children's institutions that we have. Then you can begin your own organizations. I've got, as I said, a number of students, not only in the field of disability, but also as ECCE centers they have started, which they have tried to make. And then of course you can go abroad also to pick up and improve your resources. As Jigisha ji said, that you can even be developing content, and training and advocacy is extremely important. Training and advocacy in the field of disability and child rights, we don't have sufficient professionals. Tomorrow, if you develop your skills, you can start online courses on disability. You can start online courses on child rights. We have such a dearth. And then when the situation improves, you can actually go hands down and train organizations and train teachers for this. Then research, we have beautiful organizations like CSAID and NIPSAID. These are all, the first three are Delhi based. Then Azim Premji you have in the southern part, and government bodies. Community development, community based programs is another area where we have great need. I was tempted to, these are my last two slides, I can avoid them, but if I can get just 1 minute. National education policy, I was just tempted as a last minute thing, I added this. Yeah, the national education policy is the most talked about document right now, and a beautiful document, and it has emphasized two areas. Three areas, in fact. First, on which you must have already spoken about the foundational literacy years, and 3 to 8 years becoming very important. The second thing is that it has really emphasized the education of children with disability. And the third area which has been greatly emphasized is socially, economically disadvantaged groups, which includes all the marginalized children. And within that, they have said that each district is supposed to be endowed with, given a lot of money for starting inclusion funds as well as gender fund. And when there is so much money lying with the districts and the government, you can wait for so many opportunities happening for you. So the socially economically disadvantaged groups which have been identified are based on gender, socio-cultural identities like scheduled tribe, geographic identities like villages, hills, and small towns, then disabilities, and socio-economic conditions like being children of migrant laborer, low-income families, vulnerable children, victims of trafficking, street children, beggars, and children from slums. So, lastly, girls, students of HD can make a difference in society today and tomorrow, as they provide solutions to complexities that life poses at its different stages, and by virtue of its rich diversity and variety, and a surprise that life always brings with it. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. Thank you so much.